project management can be implemented and utilized successfully within any project in any industry. We'll discuss what makes a project, what is project management, how project management can add value, and how you might learn about and implement elements of project management into your business. Today's speaker, Amanda Dahl, owner of Boost Consulting, aims to support the learning and implementation of project management successfully, regardless of business type or size. She has a geology degree, worked as a geologist with Cameco, and has 20 years experience in program and project management, geoscience, operational excellence, corporate and business planning, and business development in multiple industries. Amanda has her master's certificate in project management professional certification, Lean Green Belt certification, 6 Sigma Black Belt training, and change management specialist certification. She also volunteers with the Project Management Institute and Win-Win Saskatchewan Mentorship Committee. With that, I'll turn it over to Amanda to start our lunch and learn.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, it's great because she covered like our first 2 slides, so that already hacks off like a few minutes. So wonderful to be here. It's so great to see some old coworkers of mine, some familiar names, and of course, all the new names here as well. So for those that don't know me, as Lisa said, my name is Amanda Dahl. Definitely we'll go through some of the experience in more detail to tell you, why you're here, how I got here. But first, I want to address the second part of today's title. So yes, we're here to talk about project management. We'll dig into some of the what and the details. But really what I want to do today is talk about what's in it for you. So for any of you that are organizational change managers or have any experience or just, interested in human behavior, when we're asking somebody to do something different or learn something new or make change, which is what we're doing here today, hopefully, you have to answer the question. You have to make a case, build some desire. Why should I come here for an hour? Why should I be listening to Amanda? Why should I find value in this? And ultimately, what will I get out of it? So that's my goal today. And actually, I'll just flip slides here. So Lisa wonderfully covered the first 2 bullet points about my experience. I'll dig more into that to kind of tell you about the story of why I'm here, why I believe there is value to, again, get that buy-in from you or to sort of want to dig in more. But the third bullet point is the very important bullet point for me, is that today I want to give you some kind of value. So yes, we'll talk technical details. We'll talk about, the what, the why, the who, the when, tell the story. But I want to give you some kind of seed of value or something that you can take away and use in your everyday life. So the challenge is for me to do that. And if I don't, I'd love for you to contact me after, send me a message, and we can connect more. So I don't want to waste your hour. I'm very thankful that you're here, and I want to ensure that you get something from this. So that's the challenge to myself. So for those that don't know me or missed a little bit of what Lisa said, I have had a very varied career. So I'm really thankful for that. I've always been interested in a number of different things, but really when I got to the project management part of my career, that's when a bunch of light bulbs started to go off. So I'm a big fan of light bulb moments. I love seeing this in other people and seeing when this happened. So I want to give you that story first before we dig in, so you can really understand Amanda's not making this up. This isn't some theory on the internet. She didn't hear somebody else say this and want to regurgitate it. She's lived this, she's seen this, and she's seen this with other people. So as Lisa mentioned, I did start my career off at Cameco Corporation in, I guess that would be the early 2000s as a geologist. So like many of you here, I was involved in projects, I ran projects, I led projects in different ways, but I wasn't really using formal project management. Our department had a certain way of running projects. I'm sure all of you can identify with that. When you jump into a new career, they give you some idea how to do things, but ultimately projects were run individually, personally. It was up to that team or that person leading that project on how it would go. So obviously a number of different benefits of that, but then there are some downsides of that as well. So looking back now, and I'll talk more about that after, if I would have had some of the foundational elements of formal project management, if my department would have, my coworkers, I can see a lot of value, how things would have been even better, how people's experiences would have been even better. So as I moved into the corporate development department after about 8 years, again, I found myself involved in projects. I was leading projects. For a couple of my old coworkers here in corporate development, you'll know we even gave them project code names, funny little project names. So again, we weren't using formal project management, but we had ways of running these projects, again, dependent on who was involved. So it really wasn't until I moved into the operational excellence department at Cameco about 5 years later that I got the title project manager slapped on me. So I know I can't see you. You are welcome to turn your cameras on, but I'm guessing there's some folks here that maybe somewhere in their career got a title put on them, but really didn't have the formal training. That might seem like a bad thing. Maybe some people are thinking, oh, I can't believe they did that. But for me, it was life-changing. This is where I began to see the elements of project management, the value of it, because I was put into it. So I was asked to lead Lean and Six Sigma projects, primarily a program, which is a bunch of projects that are all managed together. They all have the same goal. And this is where I started to interact with project managers, with formal project management. This is my light bulb moment. This is when I started to see all the great things I had done in the past that everyone was doing, but something here was different. There was some kind of value. The successes were sooner. There was more clarity. There was all this value, and I wanted to understand it more. So I promise I'll stop talking about myself in a second, but this is where I went then to Edwards Executive Education. I wanted the full package. I wanted to understand all of the foundational information about project management, not just what I was exposed to. So that's really where I started to get a lot of tools and techniques that when I moved out of Cameco and I went to federated cooperatives, I moved into a role that had nothing to do with project management. I was a corporate performance manager, which meant I helped senior executive and business units and departments plan, essentially annual planning, long-term planning. One of the problems they often ran into, and this isn't a bad thing for federated, it's what everybody typically experiences, is they struggled to achieve their one-year objectives. And what we found out is because there was no way to break that down. There was no way to know how to do it, what to do. And so this was my first example of where I was allowed to bring project management into planning, and with great success. So we'll talk more about that, but this is again where now I started to see what I do today is in non-traditional project management offices. You can use elements with a lot of benefit. So same comment when I moved into the University of Saskatchewan. So even though I was a senior project manager and I worked in an enterprise project management office, that was very standardized, that was very mature from a project management perspective. When we went out as project managers into the university, doesn't matter, business, academic, outside of IT, there was relatively not a lot of knowledge about project management, about the value. So again, we had to tweak it, we had to tailor it, we had to utilize elements in a different way. So after all of this, I fell in love with project management. I now teach the PMP course for Edwards Executive Education. And the reason I tell you that is because it's yet another opportunity to bring elements of this to multiple businesses, to multiple industries, different people, doesn't matter what you do. So that's what I want to do today. Clearly it's condensed into an hour, but I want to get you to actually do some interactive activities and share your thoughts, because I want you to start thinking about how this might make sense for you in your life and what you do. Oh, I see some things in the chat here, Marianne. I don't know if you have a chance. Oh, there are direct ones. Ha. Okay, again, apologies if I missed something. I want to just maybe take a second. You can verbally interject as well. I'm totally comfortable with that. If I miss your chat or you want to say something, just unmute and jump in. Okay, so shameless quick plug, and then we'll move into project management proper. So this is why I started my business. I struggled in my day job because I loved the work, but I wanted to help a lot of other people. And so we all know here with the day job, you have to focus on that. It's hard to go into the world and help others. So that's what I've been doing. So I'll talk about that at the end of today, about how I walk the walk, how I'm seeing other companies do this. And they are not your big companies. They are not these very mature, projectized. That's good too, but these are, restaurant owners, brewers, exploration companies. There's all kinds of people that I'm helping to incorporate elements and see some benefit. The last thing I'll say that's I'm very passionate about is having a reinforcement plan. So like today and any sort of course that you've ever joined or anything you've ever taken, you often get excited, right? You get jazzed. You think, yeah, that's great. I'm going to do something with that. And then you go back to work and you're not sure how to incorporate it. You get back into your fires, into your everyday job, and it's potentially lost. So when I work with companies, we build reinforcement plans. I talk a lot about change management to help people actually take away the seeds today, the nuggets. Anything you take away, how are you actually going to apply it? So I have a call to action for you at the end of today. Okay, so enough about my business. I just want to say that one of the things that I'm here to talk about today is project management, but much like my own work, I don't believe that any discipline is just its own thing. So if you're a lawyer, you don't just have legal knowledge. If you're a project manager, you don't just have project management knowledge. What I'm asking for you today is to consider, even no matter what you do, if you're, an EA, an accountant, a lawyer, an entrepreneur, think about how you might take elements of project management and enhance what you do or boost. I'm sorry, I know it's gross, but I had to get that in there. Okay. So now I want to hear from you. So just before you do anything, before you put anything in the chat or say anything, one of the elements of being a project manager that I've come to learn and I've seen in other people is it's a difficult job. You have to be comfortable with stress. Projects are complex and they often bring about stressful, complex moments. You have to be vocal. You have to be a good communicator. You have to be able to influence up, down, sideways. And one of the things to do that means you have to speak up. You have to use your voice and you have to be courageous. So I could have used a Menti, I could have used a poll, but I'm getting a little old school here. And with that theme, I want you to be brave and share your thoughts. Because if you put something in the chat, your name is attached to it. That's what we have to do in our everyday life. So what I would like to hear from you now, and I'd love everyone, I realize we have a lot of people, so the chat hopefully will light up. I want you to be honest with me and authentic. When you hear the words project management or saw the link for this course, what is the first thing that came to your mind? So good, bad, ugly, positive, negative. If nothing came to your mind, say nothing. If you got angry, say angry, because we're going to talk about some of those things. So I'm just going to have a look at the chat here, and I encourage everyone to look at the chat, see what people are saying, wrangling kittens, timelines, supporting clients, lots of steps and checklists, structure, managing the scope, schedule, and budget, organized, professional, planful, goals. I know you can read, but it's fun to say it out loud. Hearing the same old thing and not making change. Thank you. I love that. Thank you for your honesty. An opportunity to learn how to do things better. Very new. Excellent. Organizing many professionals. So just as those are coming in, one of the things I meant to say up front, and maybe it's a good time now, is it doesn't matter how many years of experience you have in project management, whether it's 0 or 20. If you're a seasoned professional here in project management, we can still learn a lot from one another and you can still have some takeaways. Okay, great. So those are coming in. Please continue to read them. We are going to address those. I wanted to get that out because we have a lot of good things, we have a lot of not so good things, and we have a lot of neutrality. And I don't think it's good to just sit around and talk about all the wonderful things. We want to talk about what is this really like for people and how does this really exist in the workplace. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit about how I saw value in project management. So as I mentioned, when I was in operational excellence, one of the things I started to see is all these great things happening by using elements of project management. So with each and every, structure or tool or template, it was easy to identify why it was working, but I'm a bubbler upper. So I don't know for any of you, one thing I need to do is when I'm presented with new information, I need to bubble it all up and then go back into the details. So I was really trying to figure out, what is it about project management? What's happening here? Why, when we do this, why is it adding value? Why are we getting a lot of benefits? I don't want to take away from the fact that there's negatives if not used properly, but I was seeing a lot of value. And what I realized, and you will see this on the internet, I did come up with this on my own for myself, but this is not new. But what I really came to understand is at the core of it, it's just about being more deliberate and proactive. That's really what it's about. It's about shifting your effort. So you're all doing a lot of great things in your projects. You're all taking a lot of steps and processes. You probably have some structures and tools and templates already. What project management can offer is either starting to or becoming more deliberate and proactive. We'll talk about the benefits of why that is, but think about your own life. Think about your own life at home. We do this all the time in our own life. We get insurance for things. We put winter tires on. We do a lot of activities to ensure that we get ahead of potential issues. So what's very common in a lot of workplaces, and this isn't about blame, this isn't about saying, everything's wrong. It's for a number of reasons. Human nature, we're very busy. We typically work and hope things happen. So for anybody here who's a subject matter expert, or you've been in a company or a department for a long time, you've done this before. So you kind of think, okay, we're going to start this project. Everybody knows what to do. Let's go away and do it. And that happens, and there's successes in there. But what can happen is we become very reactive then. We haven't planned for things. We haven't detailed out and aligned and agreed on things. And so we're constantly reacting because your projects will always have change in them. I have yet to meet a project that hasn't had any change. And when that happens, we often scramble. And so we react. And with that comes a lot of the negative parts for people, frustration, stress. So it's not that you still won't be successful. It's that you could have been more successful. You could have created a better experience for people by being more deliberate and proactive. So that's what I throw out to you today, regardless of how you do it, how you use it. This is at the core of it, is finding ways to become more deliberate and proactive. So if we dig into that a little bit more, and then I'm going to hear from you again in a couple of minutes, let's get into the what's in it for you. So again, regardless of what templates, tools, methods, approaches, there's all kinds out there for you to use. At the core of project management, one of the things that it's delivering to you is a common language. So how many people here work for large companies, and when you were onboarded, they gave you the acronym list? They gave you the list of, whatever, I don't know, 150 or something. What part of that is helping you understand these are the words we use. We all understand the value of it because you can't take the time to re-explain everything every time. So that's what project management does. If I say to you, risk register, or I say to you, budget, or scope of work, we all know what that means. We know what the expectations of us are within that, and we know what kinds of work is involved, which segues nicely into another benefit of consistency and clarity. So common language is part of that story, but another part is clarity on roles. So how many of you have worked on projects where you kind of know what you're supposed to do? Maybe someone will call on you later. Somebody's told you you're involved, but that's as far as it's gone, and you sort of wait and you sit to be called upon. You can't plan for that. You don't know how it's going to balance with your other work. Project management facilitates getting that in order before you start doing work. Who's doing what? Why are they doing what? Have they agreed on it? Have they aligned on it? So yes, you're shifting your effort a bit, but you're bringing about clarity for all so that when that time comes, everything's in place. One of the other big pieces that's part of consistency and clarity is accountability. So I don't think this is new to anyone here, is that when there are problems or issues, often what one of the root causes is a lack of accountability or a lack of clarity around accountability. And so it's not about blaming people. It's not about saying you should have known. It's about taking the time to associate accountability with everyone. What are you accountable for? What am I accountable for? What does that mean? What does that look like? Do you agree to that? Am I just putting that on you? Has anybody ever been on a project where a sponsor or a team member was just assigned and nobody actually even talked to them? So project management is about being very clear and aligning and agreeing on who's doing what and who's accountable. It also allows you to have a stronger customer focus. So when I say customer, it's not just about end user. It's not just about, the person at the end of the day paying for your product. If you are writing a report and somebody wants that report from you, that person is your customer. What we often do with a lack of project management is we assume. We do a lot of assuming, or we have very quick conversations. We do not document anything. We have a conversation, we go away and we do work. So you might get it right and you might get parts of it right, but project management facilitates the deliberate documentation, conversation, agreeing and aligning on what the customer wants, whether that's your business, your department, your sponsor, so that when you go and do the work, you actually deliver what they wanted, not what you thought they wanted or some jumbled version of that. So I saw some comments in there, and I love this because a lot of people, and we'll talk about this in the next slide, think that project management is just filling in templates and tools. That's part of it, because documentation is very important to a point, not for the sake of it. So these tools and technology is just enabling what you're already doing. It's just giving you some new things to do to just enhance your work or elevate it. So ultimately, project management using elements, it's not that you're not already getting success. You're all here, you all have jobs. Clearly, you're getting success on your projects. It's about increasing that success financially, with people, whatever, or it's about getting it more timely so you can get it sooner in time and have more time to do other things. So key point from this slide is that this isn't about overhauling what you're doing. Amanda's not here to say, okay, stop everything you're doing, create new processes, do everything that's available to you from project management. It's about finding the pieces that help you enhance what you're already doing and beef it up. Okay, so I love this slide. I love it so much because I heard all of your comments in chat, and I absolutely appreciate your honesty. When I became a project manager, I could not figure out why people were so resistant to me when I first started working with them. I quickly realized people are often, how do I say this? Nervous, put off, scared, intimidated by project managers because there are certain aspects of it that are distasteful. What might be happening is that maybe project management isn't being utilized in a great way. So what I believe project management is not, and you can challenge me on this later, now, never, is that it's not rigid. It's not that you take all the things that it offers you and apply them all in a certain order, not one, not two, not three, not four. There's rigor. So some, I'm going to actually hit the next one, different areas like engineering, construction, architecture, they use project management with rigor. They use a lot of the tools and templates, a lot of the methodologies because they need to. Complex projects, it's valuable, but it's not one size fits all. So if you have a smaller project or you're in a different kind of business, utilize it in a way that makes sense. A lot of it is trial and error. Which templates do you want? Which structures do you want? So it's not rigid. If somebody tells you otherwise, then that's a different battle. But for me, what I do in my own life is I see that there's value to pick and choose what works well. So it's really not just those tools and templates. This bullet is one of my favorites. It is not supposed to be wasted effort. So if you're doing things with project management and they don't add value, that is a light bulb moment for you to say, this isn't working. How else can we do this? How else can we leverage this in a way that's adding value? So I ask you, if you're already a project manager or you use elements and you find it onerous or it doesn't add value, that's one of your takeaways today. Have the conversation. How can it be valuable for me, for us? And it's not a software package. Computers don't manage projects. Humans do. Technology is just an enabler to do better work. Okay. So I don't want to give you a full history lesson, but I like storytelling. Like I mentioned, I like kind of setting the foundation and then going through to see where we are today. So I'm going to run through this pretty quickly because I think a lot of you probably know this, but project management, you know, if you really want to go back as far as the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge, you name it, people have been managing projects, and we'll talk about definition, for thousands of years. The one thing that's been different in the last 100 years that they did before, and I talked about it as a geologist in corporate development, is they managed it in their own way. So if you're the leader of the project, if you live in a certain country, if there's social norms, everybody was doing things differently. Again, you can still get successes from that, but what started to happen, like many of your disciplines, so again, if you're a lawyer, accountant, geologist, whatever, is you see people start to realize, let's bring this together. Let's all benefit from the good things, maybe throw away the bad things, and let's create a discipline. So in the 1900s, that's what happened, is people started to see some tools were working well. Let's formalize this. Let's bring this together and let's share this. So it was in the mid-50s that project management actually became a distinct discipline. And what that meant is they could start to build groups and share this information. So that's what we have. So the Project Management Institute, and I won't get into it today, I encourage you to go to pmi.org, is it's a way to share this information, to teach people, to get people up to speed, to find ways to utilize this in a global manner. So if you go and you get some kind of certification in project management from PMI, that is good anywhere. Unlike APEGs and some other things which are provincial or city related, if you are a PMP, a project management professional here, you are in Japan, you are in India, you are in anywhere. So that's a cool thing, is you're actually using a common global language in some way, shape, or form. When PMs are trained, there's a lot of commonality no matter where you are in the world. One of the things we're going to talk about, because yes, it's women in mining and it's a real, I don't want to say issue, but it's a real situation today, is that this has heavily been a male-dominated profession. And for a number of good reasons, different reasons, bad reasons, what have you, we'll unpack that a bit. But I want to talk about the role of women as well in project management. But before we do that, I want to hear from you. Amanda's been talking a lot. I want to hear some of your thoughts. So when we say what is project management, I asked you what you thought, and I saw all kinds of great things come in. If we were to look at the definition from a PMI perspective, so the global standard in their body of knowledge, this is how they define project management. I'm going to give you a second to read that. So according to PMI, they're saying it's the use of specific knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to deliver something of value. So again, I'd love you to be brave. I'd love everybody to put something in the chat. What do you notice about that definition? What is your initial reaction when you read what project management means? What came up? Yes, I'm seeing vague. Thanks, Amanda. Good. Any other thoughts? Flexible? Yep, great. General? Oh, another Amanda. What do you know? Where's timeline? Yeah, blue sky. Value and logical thinking, the word value. Thank you. Hi, Irina. Kim, makes me think that every project manager, that everyone is a project manager. Thanks, Kim. And that's absolutely what we're going to talk about next. Yeah, there's no definition of specific knowledge. Okay, excellent. So we're starting to see a theme, right? It's vague, it's broad. This segues into when we talk about then what is a project. Everybody here is a project manager. That's what I got out of that definition, because all of you here today have specific knowledge, you know, have skills, you have tools, you can gain the ones around PM, about project management. The key thing about value is that somebody wants it. So unless you're sitting in your office creating a project and spending your own money on it and delivering something nobody wants, you are a project manager. The definition of project is much the same. So if you ask yourself, how is this different than operations? How is this different than other things that I'm doing? The three pieces of a project are: one, it has to have a start and an end. It's temporary. So unlike operations, like you think, let's example, a mining circuit, a uranium mine, it's always cranking out uranium every day. That's an operation. However, if you're fixing the pipes on there, you're changing out a piece of that circuit, that's a project. There's a beginning and an end. It's something that creates value. So again, like you all said, it's a very loose term in this case, but unless nobody wants it or is willing to pay for it, it's a project. And last, and just as importantly, it's unique. It's different. So it's not something you've done before. And that's a very loose term, because even if you're a contractor and you're in construction and you build a building on the corner of, 22nd and whatever, if you build that same building on a different corner, it's technically different. So what I want you to take away from this, and Kim said it well, is everybody's a project manager here and everybody's been involved or led projects. So you don't have to be a formal project manager to take elements of this and utilize it in your everyday life. So thank you to all of you for contributing to the chat. You're absolutely on the right track. So keeping with that storytelling again, there's been a recent shift. So this is something I've experienced. Again, critically think about this. Maybe you see it differently. Even in the 10, 15 years I've been involved in project management proper and the 20 years of my working life, I'm starting to see, especially through the PMP course that I teach, people are thinking about it differently. They're thinking about it in the way that I'm here today, is that there's elements and benefits of it for them, and you don't have to just be in engineering or construction or IT or called a project manager. More and more people are hiring people and considering project management expertise of value. More and more people are starting to understand the value of it. We're talking about it. They're seeing it in action. Those skills are transferable. People are going out and getting them. One of the things, if you do want to be a project manager proper or work in that world, is I'm almost constantly now seeing in job postings that a PMP or a project management professional certification is required. The reason is, and I talk to a lot of employers about this, is they want you to have all of that foundational knowledge at hand. How you go away and use it, that's up to you and your company and your department, but they want you to have that fulsome knowledge, not just necessarily getting grandfathered into pieces and parts of it. And there are a ton of jobs. PM jobs are increasing. We'll look at some stats, but there's a need for them. So again, if job security or you're just interested in a shift, there's a lot of opportunity within project management. And this is my favorite part of this slide. Did anybody notice that, where the red arrow is? Yes, so they're showing you the role of women is changing, it's increasing. And we'll talk about that. I see something in the chat. The thing that made me laugh, oh, there's a smile. The thing that made me laugh about this picture is that it looks like she's partying, like, woo. And so, maybe, but I think it just brings about an excitement that the inclusion of women is increasing. And like any other profession out there, that's great news. Okay, so let's have a conversation. Again, I know I'm asking a lot of you and I will continue to, is to hear your voice and hear your thoughts. So there are a ton of root causes of the next statistic. So women now globally, so this is global. So obviously it's very different depending on where you are in the world, your company, etc. But on average, women make up about 20 to 30% of formal project managers. So why do we think this is? I'm a big fan of root cause. I teach it a lot in my operational excellence courses. There are a trillion of them, I'm sure. I bubbled up, as I mentioned, into a few, but do we have any thoughts out there in the chat about why do you think that women aren't on par or even more? Why do we think it's still sort of, below that 50%? Again, not saying that's the right number, but any general thoughts on why that might be? You're welcome to verbally jump in too. Some women may not have access to adequate education. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, to be a PM, you need to be a leader. Yeah, and often societal expectation is it as a man. Absolutely excellent. Thank you, Arena. Women don't pursue this career. Yeah, women aren't as likely to apply for these roles if they aren't 100% qualified. Oh man, that applies to everything. Some women might not appear to be aggressive enough. Men don't take women seriously. Yeah, I know we have a couple of men too in the audience. Would love to hear your thoughts. No pressure, but always like the diversity of thought. Underestimate their skills, need more women in decision-making roles. Absolutely. So everything you said, love it. I tried to find sort of the major things. I'm not taking away from the things that aren't on this slide. These are just some things I'd like you to think about, knowing there, yeah, like Haley just put in the conversation, there are a ton of reasons why. What I saw commonly, and myself, I experienced this. I've seen my friends experience this, my coworkers, and I think Arena said it is, women have to assert themselves more upfront, more strongly upfront. Remember when I said I could always feel that whenever I'd come into a room? I didn't know if it was because I was female, if it's because I was a project manager. I'm sure it was a combination, me, my personality, who knows? But what I found when I watched men and other project managers is they almost got this just, yeah, this is what you do. Yeah, okay, great, let's go. Yeah, we know this guy, let's go. But because there aren't as many women project managers and it's more unfamiliar, is you had to do this more assertive, sometimes even borderline aggressive, just to get people to attend meetings, show up, respond, etc. I think, again, sorry if I get this wrong, but somebody had said that we don't have a lot of women in those roles. So I think it was Marianne. We don't have role models necessarily. So when things become difficult for us as women and we want to be in those professions, often we rely on feedback and input from those who have blazed that trail, who have worked that world. It's not that we can't get that from men. There are a lot of men, I don't want to take away from that understand and can provide insight, but it makes it difficult when we can't sort of see what this looks like from those who went before us. We also have a component of work-life balance. I mentioned this earlier, projects are very stressful. You have to be courageous. They're very complex. At times they require overtime. I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying you can't manage projects from 8:30 to 4:30. But when we're trying to balance our lives, that can often make it complicated because a project manager job is very heavy. And then lastly, and this one hurt me a lot when I read this, is on average, women make 16% less from a project management perspective globally. When you break it down, That average is made up of a number of different stages in career, but I wanted to draw your attention to two. At the entry level, it's actually quite a bit closer. So it's only 5% difference for women. When you get to a senior level, on average, there's a 26%. Women are making 26% less than men. So imagine working your whole life for 20, 30 years only to get paid 30% less. So again, all of these things, and I'm not taking away, there are a ton of other root causes. It makes it difficult for women to bust in, but like any other career, we have to find ways to change that. And we see that number going up. So for those of you that love statistics, I'm going to be honest, I don't really, but I thought numbers are good. You know, we want to talk even in relative. So I don't, you know, for those of you that are perfectionists or love absolute values, I'm sure you can find semi-contradicting numbers here, but it's the relative points I want you to take away. So as I mentioned, there is an increase in jobs for project managers, and sometimes not even project manager proper, is just something in the nature, the element of project management. And so expected to increase over the next 5 years quite a bit, 33%. North America, even if this number is a little bit wrong, spends $2 trillion on projects a year. So whether that's capital projects, I don't know the criteria to call something a project, but let's just say even if half of that was proper projects, that's a lot of money. When we jump to the stat at the bottom of this slide, that's scary because we're spending a lot of time and money. We're hiring a lot of people. We're putting in a lot of effort on projects. But if you jump to that bottom bullet point, is we're not having a lot of success on average. So McKinsey, KPMG, there's a ton, Harvard Business Review, there's a ton of stats on this. You can go and dig into it. But on average, the number is that 30% of projects are successful while the other 70% aren't. That is scary. Think of the money and the people effort and the time all of you are putting into your projects. Even if that number is 50%, that's still a lot of waste. So what I'm here to pitch to you today, and what you will see in statistics, is project management will help you become more successful. So your ROI, your return on investment, people-wise, not just talking financial, experience, everything will go up by utilizing elements of standardized project management. I'm saying that, you can argue it with me, absolutely, but I've lived it, I've seen it. So again, I want to hear from you. So before we do, one of the biggest questions you might be asking yourself is, why is that? Why was that number 30%? Why isn't it 80? So when we think about why projects fail, I need to first flip it and tell you what the definition of success is. So according to PMI, in this conversation we're having now, projects are considered successful at the core if they come in scope of the work, so the work you said you would do, on budget, so the money you said you would spend, and on time, so your schedule. So if projects out there, 70% of them are failing at one or more of those three things, why do we think that is? Again, I want to hear from you in the chat verbally. Think of your own projects. Think back when something didn't work well, or you had to add time, not formally in a formal change management process, or things dragged. Why do you think that is? Any thoughts? Seeing some chat. Yeah, lack of communication, miscommunication, no leadership, lack of collaboration. Oh, I see a question from Kyla. Would you say then that only 30% of PMs are successful? That's a good question. I wouldn't say that. I would say that people maybe don't have the tools and the techniques and the structure. And we'll come back to that, Kyla. I appreciate you bringing that up. I never want to look at this from a blame perspective. I want to look at it from a what can we do to bring that 30% up by helping people, like we're talking about today. Okay, no structure. Standardized PM practice is just using the formal tools. So structures, templates. We'll talk about that in a minute, what those are. So by not using that, then you're not using that standardized PM practice. Good question though. I'll come back to that, absolutely. Yeah, poor statement of work. Yeah, so people don't even know what the work is, confusion, poor scoping. So you can see there are a ton of things. So let's talk about that. Stats again. Don't worry if you can't read the slide. I just bring this up because I want to talk about it. You can take this away, zoom in, you can Google. No matter what resource you use, you're going to find commonalities to this table. So some of the big ones are change. So I heard some of you saying that change in your organization's priorities and change in your project's objectives. One of the key things about being more deliberate and proactive is you plan for that. You plan for potential change. You plan for risks. You plan for issues by the knowns, by the best of your abilities, and you put things in place so when that change does happen, and it will happen, you can work through it quickly, easily, efficiently, and keep your project on track. Another big one, and it's the second one of the top three, is inaccurate requirements gathering. So do you remember earlier when I said about customer focus? It allows you to give you more customer focus. A lot of us, because we've been doing things the same way for so long, or because we know people well, we don't sit down and have a conversation about what those customers want. So whether they're your stakeholders, we'll talk about what that means, your sponsors, your end users, there's some level of assumption or gap filling in, or we don't get that clarity. And so when we finish our project, we actually don't deliver what they wanted. So that's out of scope. So that's considered a failure. So back to Kyla's original question, no, I don't think that it's a people problem. I think it's that we don't use the tools and have the behaviors and the structures that facilitate success. So a lot of the next things we're going to talk about in the what, they're there to facilitate your success, to bring about behaviors and actions that will help you to succeed and not experience these failures. Another couple that are on here, and I heard you say, and I love this, is lack of communication or poor communication. Project managers and people on project teams have to be strong communicators. There's no choice. How you do that, that's up to your project and your people. But doing things in a vacuum, not including people in conversations, not aligning ahead of time or getting agreement on things, again, roles, responsibilities, you're setting yourself up for some difficulties. Simply by including people and communicating and sharing information and asking people how they want to be communicated with. It's a big one when you get to stakeholder engagement. Don't assume, ask. Then put that in your plans. That way you know how each and every person or group of people needs to be communicated with, so you don't waste your time over communicating or you don't create problems by under communicating. So there's a ton of other ones on this list. One of the ones I want to talk about before we move on is lack of adequate sponsorship. So call it whatever you want, but you need somebody at a senior level or in an influential position to back your project. Again, what that looks like is up to you. It's different for every project. Sometimes it's even more than one person, because when things get stressful and difficult, or you need to make change or make complicated strategic organizational decisions or decisions that impact things outside your project, you need that support system. You need that person that understands what the company is trying to do and what you're trying to do, and to find and blaze that path for you and remove those barriers. So by trying to think you can go it alone, you can on small projects, but I would suggest that you find an element of sponsorship or someone supporting you at that senior or that strategic level. Okay, so how are we doing for time? About 15 minutes left. Now let's talk about the what. So if anybody's sitting here thinking, oh, okay, yeah, she's talking about the why and the when and the value, and that's great. Talk to me. What is project management? I would love to have 5 full days with you like I do with the PMP course. We don't have that. I have about 5 minutes for this. But for those of you that aren't project managers or you've never heard of this, I want to introduce you to some generalities. And for those of you that are project managers, we're going to do an activity that I want you to challenge yourself to think about the ways that you've been doing this and where you might have areas to beef up. So for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you to do a bit of an activity. So if you could grab a piece of paper, open a Word document, you can just do this in your mind, but it's nice to take away if you can go back to something documented, as we've been talking about. If you can get that handy, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through some points, and I'm going to get you to think about your own project or projects. So as you're pulling out that piece of paper, that Word document, open, if you're writing an email, you can just start writing this at the bottom of your email. Think about a project. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be bad or good. It can be anything that you've recently worked on that had, some budget, some salaries associated with it, at least kind of a month or 2 months long, something that resonates with you, whatever the reason. And I'd ask you to write that down. Write down what that project is. And maybe it's multiple projects. If you're well-versed in this, think about more than one project, how you do it. That's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about two frameworks within project management. I'm going to get you to critically think about what you've done and what you might do going forward. So the first piece of projects, the first foundational framework for any kind of projects, agile, traditional, waterfall, does not matter. In theory, all projects should go through these 5 phases. We call them process groups, but think of them as phases. So I'm going to talk through each of those, and I'm going to get you to write numbers 1 to 5 on your paper. So the top one will be number 1, the second one will be number 2. The reason I don't put numbers on them is because I don't want you to think as project management is you do this, then you do that, then you do this, then you do that. To some degree, but there's a lot of overlap and there's a lot of flexibility and adaptability. Okay, so as I talk through each of these buckets, if you feel like you haven't done any work in that area, or you think you could do more, I'd like you to put an X. Doesn't mean it's bad. If you think you do it well, or you really hone in on that area, put a check mark. If you're not sure, put a question mark. Because this is a takeaway. After today, I want you to critically think, and we'll talk about call to action. I want you to think of the different elements of how you do projects or how you've been involved. So even if you don't lead projects, if you've been involved in any way, shape, or form, think about these buckets. We don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to talk through them quickly. There is so much information in each one, but I just want to start the conversation. Okay, so when you start a project, there should be elements of initiating a project, kicking off a project. So that's having a project charter approved and signed, aligning on what the business need is for it. Why are we doing this? What are some of the high-level risks? What's the high-level budget? What are some of our constraints? What are some things we should be thinking about going forward? Who are our stakeholders? Identifying those people that will impact your project or be impacted, and write those down. Start thinking about how you'll talk to them. So that's kind of getting your project manager, getting your project team together, having that kickoff meeting. So that's kind of initiating in general when we think about initiating a project. So that's number 1. So X, question mark, check mark. How do you do in that area? Planning. Planning is heavy. It is where you put a lot of effort. And it's one of the reasons I've seen a lot of projects, people get a little turned off, is because you are shifting your effort. Instead of being organic and reactive and dealing with everything as it comes later, you're taking that and you're putting it up front to try to reduce it overall. So planning means, and we'll talk about the different buckets you plan for, is that you have plans for every area of your project. You don't just plan part of it and then react and plan it as you go. There's some of that because we don't know everything, but in theory, for all the buckets I'm about to talk to next, you have some kind of plan. Who's doing the work? How will we measure progress? What tools and templates are we using? How will we communicate our progress, etc. So it's a fulsome plan from start to finish to the best of your ability with the knowledge you have to date. Then there's doing the work, which is executing. So I'm sure you've all done work here, of course. What I'm challenging you to think about is, did you do the work the way you said you would in the plans? So that's at the core of project management. Your plans are fulsome. And when you do the work, it's in scope. It's what you said you would do. If it's not, you'll see that loop in the image there. Sometimes we have to make change to the work we're doing for good reason, because things change. You need a formal change management process, and you need to go back and update your plans. Then go and do the new work. So when I say executing, not just did you go and do the work, did you do it according to in scope and in your plans? Or did you just do a bunch of things and react? Monitoring, controlling, that's where we actually look at the work we're doing. We go and collect data, we monitor, are we doing what we said we would do? We turn that into information, to reports, we communicate that. If we find that we're not doing what we said we would, we control that by formal change management. So structured change processes to change the work and have new plans. And then lastly, closing. So we've all finished projects. We've all said, see you later. We're successful. Great. But did you formally close a project? Did you write down your lessons learned? Did you pay all your invoices? Did you formally release resources, human and physical? So we know, what did we learn? Are people free to do other work? Did everybody get paid? So there's a formal element of writing a closeout report and closing your project out. See a bit of a chat here. Okay, exploration and mining change all the time. Absolutely. And that's in any industry. I have never seen a project yet that doesn't have change. We need formal change management processes so that everyone's aligned and can make decisions to move forward. So for the sake of time, now we don't have to do this. I'd like, again, thank you. If you wrote your check marks, your X's, keep that. That's a takeaway. I'd like you to do the same thing with these 10 knowledge areas. So much like that structure of moving through all 5 phases in every project, in theory, you should be planning and addressing each of these 10 buckets. I don't have time to talk through each of them. So this is one of your takeaways, is to look at these buckets and think about, what have I done in my projects in this? If I don't know what it is, Google it. So you can write them down as I go through them here, or look at the recording of the presentation. And think about where there's areas you might beef up. So you can do your 1 to 10 and X, check mark, question mark. So integration is just bringing your project together, having plans for everything, identifying stakeholders, formally closing out your project, making sure from a data management perspective, all of that is together in a way that makes sense. Scope of the work, like we talked about, what's in, what's out. Does anybody here deliberately document what's out of scope? You want to do that because that tells you where you're at as far as, are you following your plans? So I'm going to click through these again. I really ask you to take this away, write them down as I go through them. The idea is that you don't have to do a ton of work in each area, but you should be planning for each area. Who are your stakeholders? How are we going to communicate? What's our procurement process? Even if you have a procurement department, how are you going to connect with them? How are you going to speak with them? How are you going to engage them? How are they going to work with your project? All of this should be deliberately documented and agreed upon in some way. You don't need 400-page reports. You just need to consider these, be deliberate, proactive, and figure out how you'll move forward and execute the work. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left. I want to save a couple minutes for questions. Now I want to talk to you about how I'm doing this. So yes, you might think, oh, that all sounds well and great. Yay, okay, wonderful. I am helping companies do this. So even though I only started a year ago, I'm working with some exploration companies. I'm on the board of an exploration company. I am helping them over a long period of time implement project management in a way that fits with their company. They're junior companies, they're smaller companies. They are finding elements of value by, first, we're teaching, we're facilitating, we're sharing information to help all of their employees understand the why, like what we're talking about here today. And then we're looking at ways to build on what they're already doing to make it even better with project management, including technology. How can we enable that even more so? So like I said, I'm on the board, so it's more of an advisory role, but I share information like I am today to help management figure out how their exploration processes and the work that they're doing could be even better. I do a lot of teaching, speaking opportunities. Like I said, I see everybody from all walks of life and I pick their brains on how it's working for them. And I incorporate that into the work I do through my company. So summary slide, I hope you got this. I don't want to read through it all. I hope that I've now got you a little bit in a what's in it for me, thinking about, okay, I can do something here. I can dig in and learn more about project management. Amanda can't teach me that all today, but there's something here that I think, I could dig into more. So at the end of the day, it's about making all of your lives easier, your coworkers' lives easier, reducing stress, reducing frustration, increasing success financially, people-wise. It's just using some different things to do work in a different way. And job opportunities, of course. If you're looking for that, it's clearly a growing profession. All right, so what am I asking of you? I always like to leave with some kind of call to action. You've all sat here, maybe some are sending emails, maybe some are eating lunch and not listening. But for those of you that are, I would really, really like you to think about what you can do in each of these 3 areas. So critically think about what I shared with you today. Think about what you do, what you have done, and think about where you might have elements to enhance what you're already doing. Write those ideas down in that 1 to 5 or the 1 to 10 or however you like, and share them. I know that takes courage, especially if you work with people who are quite resistant to the notion of project management or how it works. But if you have the courage, do that, share that, build on that. Network. If you are a project manager, share that in-house. So even if you work in a department like an EPMO or a PMO, think about how other departments might be open to learning more about what you do and see how they can use it. Flip side, go ask. If you have a PMO or you know project managers, to have this conversation with them, talk to them about what you heard today and find out where there's value there potentially. And then of course, learning, dig in more so, ton of information online, ton of courses, contact Amanda. I'll put that up here next. Please reach out. So I realize I use a lot of your time today, the whole hour. We have a couple minutes left for questions. I did put my contact info in the chat at the onset. It's probably buried now. I really do want you to reach out. If you have questions and we can't address them today, if you have things like, that's garbage, Amanda, I don't believe you, I don't think so, share that too. Let's have the conversation. So I just want to say thanks to Marianne and Wim for giving me this opportunity. Thank you to all of you for spending your hour here and listening. And now we can, I think, Marianne, Lisa, can we take a couple of questions before 1 o'clock, or are we getting too close to the close?
We can probably fit a couple in.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your comments. I hope, like I said, I hope there's value. If there wasn't, contact me. Let's have more conversation. Thanks, Marianne. I should say, if I didn't answer your questions earlier, Kyla and others about those, please bring them up again. I hope I did, but if I didn't, happy to circle back. Oh, the dreaded circle backward.
That in parking lot.
Well, yes, I know. I saw that the other day. Oh, we should have an hour luncheon just on that.
Oh, you're right.
Thanks, Victoria.
So far, the comments appear to be just thanking you for the talk. So
yeah, that's great. That's good. I did hope to save more time, but I do like to talk and I'm very passionate about the subject. But again, please reach out. Would love to have a chat. And thank you all again for your ear and your time.
All right. Well, thank